There's a moment when your world stops. It might come from words you didn't expect, silence you can't explain, or betrayal you never saw coming. Suddenly, everything feels heavy. Your chest, your breath, even your own reflection in the mirror. You look at yourself and think, how did I get here? How did I let him have this much power over me? When a man breaks you emotionally, it doesn't just hurt, it shakes the ground you stand on. It makes you question who you are, what you're worth, and whether you'll ever feel whole again. You replay conversations over and over in your head, searching for the moment things went wrong. You wonder if you weren't enough, if you gave too much, or if you'll ever trust again. And in that spiral, it's easy to forget that you still have a choice. The choice is not about fixing him or convincing him to see your value. It's not about proving yourself, begging for closure, or punishing him for the pain. The choice is about what you do in this exact moment, when your heart feels shattered, when your mind is spinning, when your body wants to collapse. This moment defines whether you stay broken or whether you use the break as the very foundation to rebuild stronger than you ever imagined. And here's the truth that may sting a little. No one is coming to save you. Not him, not a new relationship, not even time by itself. Healing doesn't just happen, it's something you decide. And the first steps you take after being broken emotionally will determine the trajectory of your entire recovery. So what do you do first? What's the move? When everything inside you feels like it's falling apart. That's where your real power begins, because the answer isn't what you've been told, and it's not what you've been taught to believe. It's something far deeper, far stronger, and once you learn it, no one will ever be able to break you the same way again. The shock of being broken emotionally by a man is not something you can fully prepare for, no matter how strong you believe you are. One moment you're standing on what feels like solid ground, and the next it's as if the earth has been pulled out from beneath your feet. The human mind and body aren't wired to handle that kind of sudden rupture with ease. It rattles your nervous system, it shakes your identity, and it creates a storm inside you that you never asked for. That initial shock isn't just emotional. It's physical. Your chest feels tight, your stomach churns, sleep disappears, or if you do manage to close your eyes, you wake up in the middle of the night with your heart racing, replaying everything in your head. Food loses its taste, time loses its rhythm, and even the smallest tasks, getting dressed, sending an email, walking into a room full of people, feel like climbing a mountain. That's not weakness. That's your body reacting to trauma. The mind experiences emotional betrayal or heartbreak the same way it experiences physical injury. It interprets rejection, abandonment, or emotional harm as a threat to your survival. So your system goes into overdrive. Fight, flight, or freeze. And here's the part most people don't talk about. The shock is disorienting. You start doubting what's real. Was it your fault? Were you blind? Did you miss the signs? This mental spiral is your brain's attempt to make sense of the pain, to find a logical reason for something that feels illogical. But that spiral can become a trap. If you're not careful, you can stay stuck there, replaying every word, every look, every decision, searching for an answer that will never actually give you peace. The first step in this raw and painful stage is not to fight the shock, but to stabilize yourself inside of it. Imagine your emotional self like a glass that has just been shattered. If you try to scoop up the pieces too quickly, you'll only cut yourself. Instead, you need to breathe, to pause, to let the dust settle so you can see clearly. Stabilization is not about ignoring the pain. It's about creating enough space so the pain doesn't consume you. And how do you stabilize when your world feels like it's crashing? You begin by focusing on the basics that ground your body. Breath, movement, hydration. These sound almost too simple, but they are the anchors your system desperately needs in the chaos. When your mind is spiraling, slow, intentional breathing signals your nervous system that you are safe. When your body is tense, stretching or moving helps release the energy that pain locks inside of you. When you hydrate and eat, even when you don't feel like it, you remind yourself that you matter enough to be cared for. These small acts become your lifeline in the storm. Another part of this shock is the urge to react immediately. You want to text him, confront him, demand answers, or shut down completely. But in this stage, reactions are often fueled by raw pain, not clarity, and actions taken in pain often lead to regret. This is why the discipline of stillness is powerful. Stillness doesn't mean doing nothing. It means not letting your pain dictate your next move. It means giving yourself the dignity of space, even when everything inside you wants to lash out or collapse. There's also the mental trick your brain will play in this shock. You will feel like the story is over, like this break defines you permanently. But that is not true. The break is a moment, not your identity. Right now, you are in the rawest stage where everything feels magnified and permanent. But it will not always feel this way. This is why your focus must be on enduring the moment, not solving the future. You don't need to know how you'll heal completely yet. You just need to know how to stabilize today. The shock is also an invitation, though it doesn't feel like one. It's an invitation to meet yourself at your most vulnerable and decide what story you'll write from here. Many people try to outrun this stage. They distract themselves, they numb the pain, they jump into something new, but the pain you outrun today is the pain that will resurface tomorrow. This is why leaning into the shock, feeling it, acknowledging it, naming it, is crucial. If you can survive these raw first days without losing yourself, you're already building a foundation for the strength that comes after. And let's be honest, this stage hurts like hell. It feels unfair. It feels cruel. It makes you wonder if you'll ever trust again. But hidden in that hurt is proof of your capacity to feel deeply, to love fully. That capacity is not a weakness, it's a gift. If you can feel this much pain, it means you also have the ability to feel this much joy, love, and freedom when you heal. Right now, your system is overwhelmed by one side of that spectrum. But the very fact that you can feel this intensely is also the evidence of your strength. The shock of being broken emotionally is brutal. It is the storm before the calm, but it is not the end. It's the raw place where transformation begins. Because in the moment when you feel the most powerless, you're actually standing at the doorway of your power. Pain forces you to stop, to pay attention, to rebuild on a stronger foundation. And while you didn't choose this break, you do get to choose what comes next. The first choice is not grand. It's not about reinvention or revenge. The first choice is survival with dignity. It's deciding that you will breathe, you will stabilize, and you will not let this break define you permanently. Once you make that choice, the rest of the journey, reclaiming control, interrupting the cycle, redefining the wound, and reinventing yourself becomes possible. This stage, the shock, is the hardest to sit in because it feels like you've lost everything. But the truth is you haven't lost yourself. You're still here. And that means no matter how broken you feel right now, you are already stronger than the moment that tried to break you. Reclaiming control after being broken emotionally is not about pretending you are fine, nor is it about seeking revenge or rushing into something new to fill the void. It is about choosing with intention to take back ownership of yourself, your thoughts, your energy, your future. When a man breaks you emotionally, the most dangerous thing that happens is not the pain itself, but the illusion that you no longer have control. You begin to believe that your life, your happiness, your worth are in someone else's hands. That belief is the real prison. And the only way out is to reclaim what has always belonged to you. In the aftermath of heartbreak, it's easy to fall into patterns that reinforce the loss of control. You replay every conversation, searching for clues. You stalk his social media, dissecting photos and captions, hoping to decode meaning. You measure yourself against the woman you think he wants or the one he may already be with. Every one of these actions hands your power back to him, piece by piece. Without realizing it, you keep him in the driver's seat of your life, even though he is no longer there. And here is the blunt truth. The longer you stay in that loop, the more you abandon yourself. Reclaiming control begins with one radical decision. Stop outsourcing your power. That means no longer making him the center of your thoughts, your energy, or your future story. You may not be able to stop the pain instantly, but you can stop feeding it with your focus. Every time you choose to redirect your attention from him back to you, you are reclaiming a part of yourself that you gave away. This starts with boundaries. Boundaries are not about punishing him. They are about protecting you. If you're checking his social media every day, set a boundary, unfollow, block, mute. Not because you're weak, but because you are strong enough to create the space you need to heal. If you feel the urge to text or call in moments of loneliness, set a boundary, delete the number if you must, or write what you want to say in a journal instead of sending it. Boundaries are acts of self-respect, declarations that your well-being matters more than temporary relief. Another way to reclaim control is by owning your time. When you are broken emotionally, time can feel like it belongs to the pain. You wake up with it, carry it all day, and go to bed with it. The days blur into one another, each one heavy with the same thoughts, but you can disrupt this by creating structure. Give your day anchors, a morning routine, a workout, a project, a phone call with a supportive friend. These may feel small, but they reestablish rhythm in your life. Pain thrives in chaos. Healing thrives in structure. The more intentional you are with your time, the less space there is for pain to dominate. Reclaiming control also requires you to master your inner dialogue. The voice in your head after heartbreak can be cruel. It whispers lies. You weren't enough. You'll never find love again. You're broken. If you do not challenge that voice, it will control you. But here is the truth. You control your inner dialogue, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Start by catching the lies and naming them for what they are. Then replace them with truths. Even if they feel small, I am worthy. I am healing. I am rebuilding. You may not believe those words fully in the beginning, but repetition rewires your brain. The more you affirm your worth, the less power those destructive thoughts will hold over you. A part of reclaiming control is also rediscovering your identity. Often when a man breaks you, it's not just a relationship that ends. It feels like your sense of self shatters with it. You forget who you were before him. You forget what made you laugh, what sparked your curiosity, what lit up your soul. To take back control, you must reintroduce yourself to yourself. Make a list of things you love but have neglected. Try something new that has nothing to do with him. Reclaiming control is not just about avoiding the past. It is about creating a present and future that excites you. Another critical piece is owning your body again. Emotional pain lives in the body as much as the mind. You may feel heavy, restless, or disconnected from yourself. Movement is one of the most powerful ways to reclaim control. Whether it's running, dancing, yoga, or strength training, moving your body reminds you that you are alive, that you have agency, that you are more than your heartbreak. Every drop of sweat is a declaration. I am not stuck. I am moving forward. And let's be honest, reclaiming control is not a one-time act. It is a daily practice, and there will be moments when you slip, when you check his page, when you replay old memories, when you feel yourself spiraling. That does not mean you have failed. It simply means you need to choose again. Control is not about never slipping. It's about consistently returning to yourself every time you do. The irony is this: the very moment you feel most powerless is the moment you have the greatest opportunity to reclaim your power. Because when everything else has been stripped away, his attention, his love, the future you imagine, you are left with the one thing no one can ever take from you. Yourself. That is where your control lives. That is where your strength begins. Reclaiming control after being broken emotionally is not about denying the pain. It's about refusing to let the pain own you. It's about taking back your focus, your time, your thoughts, your body, and your identity piece by piece. It's about remembering that the power was never his to begin with. It was always yours. And once you reclaim it, no one can ever take it from you again. When a man breaks you emotionally, one of the most dangerous traps you can fall into is the cycle that begins immediately after the cycle of rumination, replaying, and self-destruction. This cycle is not just mental. It consumes your emotions, your energy, and your time. It keeps you trapped in the very pain you are trying to escape. And here's the hard truth. The cycle doesn't stop on its own. It gains strength every time you feed it. The only way out is to interrupt it with deliberate, conscious action. Think about how this cycle works. It usually begins with a trigger. Maybe you see his name pop up on your phone. Maybe a song reminds you of him. Maybe your mind drifts back to a memory. In an instant, you're pulled back into the past. You start replaying conversations, analyzing every word he said, every look, every moment. Your brain begins asking endless questions. What did I miss? What could I have done differently? Why wasn't I enough? This questioning feels productive, but it's not. It doesn't lead to clarity. It leads to obsession. It convinces you that the answers are hidden in the past, when in reality, the healing is only possible in the present. And then the cycle deepens. You check his social media, scrolling for clues about what he's doing, who he's with, how he's living without you. Each photo feels like a stab, but you can't look away. Or you start rereading old messages, trying to find the moment where everything shifted. Before you know it, hours are gone. And instead of moving forward, you've anchored yourself even more deeply in the hurt. That is how the cycle robs you. It steals your time, your energy, and your peace, all while giving you nothing in return. To break free, you have to interrupt this loop. And interruption does not mean suppressing or denying the pain. It means recognizing when you're being pulled into the cycle and actively choosing a different response. The first step is awareness. You have to catch yourself in the act. Notice the moment your mind starts replaying or your hand reaches for the phone to check his profile. Call it out. I am spiraling right now. I am feeding the cycle. Awareness gives you a moment of choice, and that moment is powerful. The next step is substitution. You cannot simply tell yourself, don't think about him. The human brain doesn't work that way. The more you try not to think about something, the stronger it comes back. Instead, you must replace the action with something else that engages your mind or body. When you catch yourself replaying or reaching for the phone, redirect, stand up and move your body, go for a run, write in a journal, call a friend. Start a project. Do something that requires your focus. It may feel forced at first, but each time you choose substitution over spiraling, you weaken the grip of the cycle. Another powerful interruption is ritual. Rituals anchor you when emotions want to drag you under. Create practices that ground you every day, especially in moments of vulnerability. For example, begin your morning with affirmations that remind you of your worth. Light a candle in the evening and write down what you need to release. Keep a notebook where you transfer your spirals, every thought that wants to replay, you write it down and close the book. Rituals send a message to your brain. This is how we process. This is how we release. It's also important to change your environment when you feel yourself slipping into the cycle. Pain thrives in isolation and stagnation. If you sit alone in the same space, surrounded by memories, the cycle grows stronger. Break the pattern by changing your scenery. Step outside, take a different route to work, rearrange your space. Even small environmental shifts can interrupt the mental loop and remind your brain that life is still moving forward. Here's something else. You must stop feeding the cycle with access. If his number, his photos, his messages are all still on your phone, you're handing the cycle an invitation. Every single day, it will tempt you, and in your weakest moments, you'll give in. Removing that access is not weakness. It is wisdom. Delete the conversations, archive the photos, unfollow or block if you must. Not to erase the past, but to protect your present. Every barrier you create against triggers is a gift to your healing. And let's not ignore the role of self-talk here. When you slip into the cycle, it's easy to shame yourself. Why can't I stop thinking about him? Why am I still stuck? But shame only strengthens the cycle. Instead, practice compassion. Acknowledge the slip without judgment. I'm in pain, and that's okay, but I don't need to stay here. Compassion interrupts shame, and shame is one of the biggest fuels of the cycle. Interrupting the cycle is also about creating forward momentum. You cannot heal by standing still in the past. You must give yourself something to move toward. Set goals, big or small, that remind you there is a future worth living. Sign up for a class, start a fitness challenge, begin a passion project. Every step you take toward the future interrupts the pull of the past. The cycle will tempt you again and again, but every time you interrupt it, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than the pull, and with practice, the cycle loses power. The memories stop haunting you as much. The urge to check his life fades. The replaying becomes less frequent. And one day, without even noticing, you realize that the cycle is gone. You are no longer a prisoner of what happened. You are the author of what happens next. Breaking this cycle is not about him. It's about you reclaiming your mind, your time, your energy. It's about refusing to hand over your peace to someone who no longer deserves it. The cycle is not your destiny. It is just a habit, and habits can be broken. The moment you decide to interrupt it, you step out of the prison and back into your freedom. Redefining the wound is one of the hardest yet most liberating parts of healing. After a man has broken you emotionally, in the beginning, the wound feels like a gaping hole, like proof that something is wrong with you, like evidence that you weren't enough. That is how most people interpret heartbreak. They see the wound as a confirmation of their deepest fears. I wasn't lovable. I was too much. I was not what he wanted. But this perspective is exactly what keeps the wound raw, bleeding, and unresolved. To heal, you must learn to redefine what the wound means. You must change the story you tell yourself about what happened, because the story, not the pain itself, will shape the rest of your life. When you've been hurt emotionally, the default human response is to internalize it. If he lied, cheated, betrayed, or walked away, your mind instinctively turns inward. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough to make him stay? But pause for a moment and look at that logic. You're taking his choices, his flaws, his inability to love, and making them a reflection of your worth. That's like blaming yourself for the storm instead of recognizing the storm for what it is. Chaotic, destructive, and outside of your control. Redefining the wound begins with separating who you are from what he did. His actions are a reflection of him, not a definition of you. Think about it this way. The wound can either be your prison or your teacher. If you see it as a prison, you'll spend years locked in self-doubt, repeating patterns, mistrusting yourself, and others, you'll let the pain dictate how you see love, men, and even your own value. But if you choose to see the wound as a teacher, everything changes. Suddenly, it's not proof of your brokenness. It's a mirror showing you where you need to grow, what you need to release, and what strength is waiting to be uncovered. Redefining the wound doesn't mean pretending the pain wasn't real. It was real. It cut deep. It changed you. But the power lies in deciding how it will change you. Will it harden you, close you off, and make you live in fear? Or will it carve out space inside you for wisdom, clarity, and resilience? Every scar tells a story, but you get to decide whether your story is one of defeat or of rebirth. One of the most important shifts you can make is moving from why me to what now. Asking why me keeps you in victim mode. It keeps you tangled in questions you may never have answers to. Asking what now positions you in power. It acknowledges the pain but focuses on what you can build from it. What now? Asks, what boundaries do I need to create? What lessons can I carry forward? What version of myself am I being called to step into? This shift transforms the wound from something that paralyzes you into something that propels you. Another way to redefine the wound is to see it as a filter. Pain, as awful as it feels, is also a clarifier. It shows you what you will no longer accept. It highlights the patterns you must break. It teaches you the red flags you ignored before. Many people look back on their deepest heartbreak and realize it was the very thing that woke them up to their own worth. Without the wound, they would have stayed asleep in unhealthy patterns, giving pieces of themselves away to someone who couldn't hold them. Redefining the wound means choosing to see it as protection in disguise, as life removing what could not serve your highest good. And here's something powerful. The wound also reveals your capacity to love. The reason it hurts so much is because you allowed yourself to be open, to trust, to give. That openness is not weakness. It's proof of your courage. Some people live their entire lives too afraid to love, too afraid to risk, too afraid to feel you were brave enough to experience it. And while that bravery came with pain, it also shows the depth of your heart. Redefining the wound means reclaiming your openness as strength, not weakness. Of course, redefining the wound doesn't happen overnight. It requires repetition, reflection, and choice. Every time the thought "I wasn't enough" creeps in, you must challenge it. Every time the story "he left because I was unworthy" plays, you must rewrite it. He left because he couldn't meet me where I am, because he wasn't capable of the love I deserve, because life is clearing space for something greater. The wound will keep trying to tell you an old story. Your job is to tell a new one until the new one becomes the truth you live by. Redefining the wound also requires forgiveness, not necessarily of him, but of yourself. Forgive yourself for staying too long, for ignoring the signs, for loving deeply, for hoping it would work. Forgiveness is not about excusing mistakes, it's about releasing the shame that binds you to the past. When you forgive yourself, you loosen the grip of the wound. You stop punishing yourself for being human, for loving with an open heart. Finally, redefining the wound is about reclaiming authorship of your story. Right now, it may feel like he wrote the ending, like his choices closed the chapter. But you are the writer. You hold the pen. The wound is just one part of your story. It is not the whole. The next chapter is yours to create. And when you choose to redefine the wound, you transform it from the thing that broke you into the thing that built you. So yes, the wound hurts. Yes, it will leave a scar. But that scar can either be a mark of brokenness or a badge of survival. Redefining the wound is about making that choice consciously. It's about deciding that this pain will not be wasted, that it will not diminish you, that it will not silence your worth. It is about claiming your story, your strength, your future, and no one can take that from you. Rising and reinventing after being broken emotionally is the stage where you stop surviving and begin thriving. It's the point in your journey where you take everything that has happened, the pain, the lessons, the scars, and you use it as the raw material to build a new version of yourself. This is not about returning to who you were before the heartbreak. That version of you no longer exists. This is about stepping into someone stronger, wiser, and more powerful than you ever imagined. Reinvention is not about erasing the past. It's about transforming it into fuel for your future. When a man breaks you emotionally, the easy path is to stay stuck in the identity of the wounded woman. You carry the story like armor. I was betrayed. I was abandoned. I was hurt. And while those things may be true, living in that identity forever keeps you tethered to the pain. Rising means deciding you are not going to be defined by what was done to you. Reinvention means choosing a new identity, one built on strength, self-worth, and possibility. The first step in rising is vision. You must begin to imagine the woman you want to become on the other side of this. Who is she? How does she carry herself? How does she speak, walk, love, and live? Get specific. Maybe she is confident in rooms where she used to shrink. Maybe she prioritizes her own needs without guilt. Maybe she creates, builds, or explores in ways she never allowed herself to before. Without vision, you'll default to the old patterns. With vision, you create a destination to rise toward. Reinvention also requires shedding. You cannot become new while holding on to everything old. That means releasing the beliefs, habits, and even relationships that keep you anchored to your pain. If you believe you're unworthy, you must shed that belief. If you have habits of self-sabotage, like chasing emotionally unavailable people or settling for less than you deserve, you must break them. If you're surrounded by people who reinforce your brokenness instead of your growth, you must distance yourself. Rising is as much about letting go as it is about building up. Another key to reinvention is reclaiming your voice. Often in relationships where we've been hurt, our voice was silenced by him, by fear, or by our own doubts. Reinvention means speaking up again, even if your voice shakes. Speak your boundaries, your desires, your truth. At first it may feel uncomfortable, even rebellious. But every time you use your voice, you rebuild trust with yourself. You prove that you will never abandon your own truth again. Rising also requires courage. Reinvention is not safe. It pushes you out of the familiar. Even if the familiar was painful, it asks you to step into new arenas, to take risks, to show up differently. Courage doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It means you won't let fear decide for you. Each small act of courage, going to a networking event alone, taking a trip, starting a project, setting a new boundary, becomes a brick in the foundation of your reinvention. And let's not forget joy. After heartbreak, it's easy to build a life that is functional but joyless. You focus on survival, on independence, on strength, but you forget about delight. Reinvention without joy is incomplete. Joy is what makes life worth rising for. Reintroduce play into your life. Dance, laugh, create, explore, do things for no reason other than they light you up. Joy reminds you that life is not just about healing pain, it's about experiencing beauty. Reinvention also thrives on purpose. When you've been broken, your life can feel meaningless. Like all the plans you had have been erased, but pain often clears space for new purpose to emerge. Ask yourself, what do I want my life to stand for now? What impact do I want to create? How can I use my story, my strength, my experiences to serve others? Purpose doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be meaningful to you. When you live with purpose, you rise above the trivial and anchor yourself in something bigger than the hurt. Another part of rising is embracing resilience. Resilience doesn't mean you'll never feel pain again. It means you've built the capacity to bend without breaking, to fall without staying down, to hurt without losing yourself. Every challenge you face from this point forward becomes proof of your strength. Reinvention is not about avoiding hardship. It's about becoming the kind of woman who can handle it with grace and power. And here's the most empowering part. Rising and reinventing shifts the focus entirely away from him. The man who broke you is no longer the center of your story. He becomes a footnote, a catalyst, not the author. The story becomes about you, your rise, your reinvention, your becoming. That's the ultimate act of power. To take the very thing that was meant to destroy you and turn it into the reason you built the life of your dreams. Reinvention is not a destination. It's a process. You won't wake up one morning fully healed and transformed. It will happen gradually through choices made every single day. Some days you'll feel unstoppable. Other days you'll feel fragile. Both are part of the journey. The key is consistency. Keep choosing yourself. Keep building. Keep rising. Over time, the fragile days become fewer, and the powerful days become your new normal. One day you'll look back at the version of yourself who was broken, crying on the floor, questioning her worth, and you'll barely recognize her. Not because she was weak, but because you've grown so much stronger. You'll thank her for surviving, for holding on, for refusing to give up. She is the foundation of the woman you've become. And that woman, the reinvented, risen, radiant version of you, is unbreakable. So, yes, a man broke you emotionally. Yes, it hurt, maybe more than anything you've ever experienced. But that was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of your rise. You are not here to stay broken. You are here to reinvent, to reclaim, to rise so high that no one will ever have the power to shatter you again. This is not just survival. This is your rebirth. When you've been broken emotionally, it can feel like your entire world has collapsed. The silence is deafening, the questions are endless, and the ache feels like it will never leave your chest. But let me remind you of something that perhaps you've forgotten in the pain. You are not finished. You are not ruined. You are not defined by the person who could not love you well. What happened to you was real, yes, but it is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a stronger one. You've walked through the shock. You've wrestled with the pain. You've faced the cycle of self-doubt, and yet you are still here. And if you are still here, it means there is more for you. More love, more joy, more light. The wound that once felt like your ending can become the very fire that forges your reinvention. You have the power to take what broke you and turn it into the very reason you rise. Do not let this heartbreak convince you that you are less. Let it reveal how much more you are. Do not allow one man's choices to rewrite the truth of your worth. He did not take your value. He simply could not hold it. Your essence remains unshaken, waiting for you to reclaim it. The question now is not, why did this happen to me? The question is, what will I do with it? Will you allow yourself to stay broken, replaying the past until it consumes you? Or will you interrupt the cycle, redefine the wound, and rise into a woman who cannot be broken the same way again? That choice belongs to you. And it always has. So stand up, wipe the tears from your face, lift your chin, and look forward. The chapter that just ended is not your whole book. It is one page, one lesson, one stepping stone. The next chapter is yours to write, and it begins the moment you decide, I am not what happened to me. I am who I choose to become. That's your power. That's your freedom. That's your rise.